Let's get to it. Was the Biden Netanyahu meeting a success? As always, quick fire round, 30 seconds each to let your initial take, and we pick up the discussion from there. So, Dr. Freeman, please take the lead here. 30 seconds, our answer.
Well, I think it remains to be seen whether or not it's successful or not. We always know that the first messaging when it comes to the meeting to the cameras is just one leg of the whole conversation. What matters is what's going to be signed. We heard Biden talk about the trains, the fact that Israel is going to be a major point between the European and Asian continents. We heard about Saudi Arabia. We also know that Netanyahu met with Zelensky just before he met with Biden. It could be something about that as well.
All right, Gilad Katz.
Well, I think it was, I think, for the time being, it was a success. I think it was a success not only for Netanyahu, but I think also for the state of Israel, because this was the first time that openly we heard the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Israel talking about the normalization or peace process or whatever regarding Saudi Arabia. This is something that we can only dream of just two years ago. So this is, I think it's a great success. We'll have to see how things will turn out.
Last but not least, Mr. Dan Perry.
Netanyahu wanted a meeting with Biden anywhere at any time in order to be able to tell Israelis that his overhaul plan is in no way damaging relations with the U.S. That Biden should give him this gift suggests that he has at least hopes that a Saudi deal is attainable, and that is genuinely interesting because he must know that the composition of Netanyahu's government makes that very difficult, if not almost fantastical.
All right, gentlemen. So from this point onwards, let's please feel free to interact, to engage in a conversation. But before we do just that, let's take a quick listen to what was perhaps topping the American president's agenda today. Let's take a listen.
We're working on a lot more together. Today, we're going to discuss some of the hard issues, and that is upholding democratic values that lie at the heart of our partnership, including checks and balances in our systems, and preserving a path to a negotiated two-state solution, and ensuring that Iran never acquires a nuclear weapon.
Gilad Katz, was Biden too harsh, not harsh enough?
No, it was a checklist. He had to say what he said. It took him about 5 seconds. I don't think that neither Biden nor the administration or the Congress really do care about the judicial reform. What they want to see is stability in the region. What they want to see, the peace process, I would say even going back to life. The judicial reform was just one very small topic that he had to mention, for his donors, since he may start his campaign in a few months. So I don't really take that as too seriously. But one thing I can say is I'm trying to look and see and read, maybe, I don't know,
the body language.
The head of the opposition. The head of the opposition, how they reacted and what they said after the meeting, and surprisingly, they were all quiet. And I think that is a proof that the meeting went well for Prime Minister Netanyahu, and they know that, therefore, they just didn't do anything about it.
Well, let me not stay fully quiet. This meeting puts an end to 9 months of a boycott of Netanyahu by the president, which clearly relates to the judicial reform, as you put it, the authoritarian overhaul, as I would put it, that you consider to be a small thing. I would ask you, Mr. Katz, why is it that Netanyahu had to strive so hard to achieve this meeting, and in the end, to date, has still been denied a White House meeting, if not for the fact that perhaps Biden does care about having Israel not become an authoritarian country? Is there another reason?
Well, I'll tell you what the reason is. There's a lot of pressure, politics. The opposition, as we see these days, are doing its best to damage Israel's PR.
Oh, really? Biden's scared of a bunch of Israeli protesters, liberals in the streets. He's quaking in his boots.
Allow me to answer. You asked me a question. I can almost see you tearing after the success of the meeting.
I'm sorry. I assumed you were joking.
And what I can say is that no boycott. They had phone calls. It took time. And now after they had a meeting, they will have another meeting in less than 2 months. So now you can talk about history and you can try and explain to us. At the end of the day, there's the bottom line. And the bottom line is very simple. We are heading towards a normalization with Saudi Arabia. And we're talking about, this is making history. And what can I say? Netanyahu is the prime minister. I'm not surprised he did such an act. And you can say what you can say, or whatever you wouldn't say, but facts count at the end of the day.
All right, we will get back to the domestic troubles that traveled abroad with Netanyahu in a bit, but now perhaps a quick listen to what was topping Netanyahu's to-do list today. A quick listen.
I think that under your leadership, Mr. President, we can forge a historic peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And I think such a peace would go a long way, first, to advance the end of the Arab-Israeli conflict, achieve reconciliation between the Islamic world and the Jewish state, and advance a genuine peace between Israel and the Palestinians.
Dr. Freeman, simply put, is a Saudi nuclear program a ticking bomb for Israel? Does Israel have more to gain or to lose from Saudi normalization or the satellite agreements surrounding Saudi normalization?
Well, I think it remains to be seen what's going to be in the agreement. I saw the reports concerning the nuclear program that could be starting up in Saudi Arabia. But I think the real threat is the Iranian nuclear program. And we know that part of the normalization that Israel is doing with the Arab world is really to project that Iran is not normal. And we're forming a coalition against Iran. So I think part of what's going to be happening in terms of Israeli decision-making is what's a bigger threat. The possibility of Saudi Arabia delving into something that might be a threat in the future, or the present and clear danger of Iran and what it poses to Israel and other players in the region.
Dan Perry, today's threats versus tomorrow's potential ones?
It's a legitimate question. I do agree with Mr. Katz that normalization with Saudi Arabia would be a tremendous boon for Israel in the region, no doubt about it. I would hope that would coincide with an improvement on the potentially much more disastrous Palestinian front. But putting that aside, the various conditions that appear to be related to this deal, including the possibility of civilian nuclear program in Saudi Arabia, are disturbing, because Israel itself has in the past warned against precisely that scenario where there is a nuclear race across the Middle East that Israel does not want to see, even if it includes its allies and its Arab friends, even Egypt. Who knows, maybe even Jordan. That's not a great scenario, but you can't have it all. And at the end of the day, this is premature. The main question, I think, with the Saudi deal, which again I would welcome, is whether the Saudis really are going to sell the Palestinians down the river. I have my doubts about that. I don't rule it out, but it's possible that the Saudis will, in the end, condition a very attractive deal for Israel on something Israel should also want, on something that rational Israelis indeed do want, which is a peace process with the Palestinians, or at the very least a separation process from them. And we know very well that Netanyahu's fanatical right-wing allies are not going to allow this. So, we could be headed for interesting times ahead.
So, Gilad Katz, before we take a break, will Netanyahu's right-wing coalition swallow the bitter pill with the Saudi spoonful of sugar?
Well, that's a very good question. I have no idea about that. I can assure you that if we'll have a deal on the table, a normalization deal, a peace treaty, whatever, I think that Netanyahu will be able to have a majority. The question is, what will happen to his coalition? I have no idea about that. I think that the right wing, and as a right wing believer, I think that the right-wing parties should take it very seriously and understand what we're standing in front of, and not to try and see what the, to see what the problems are, but what the hope can be. And it will be very, as my colleague said, it will be very, very interesting these coming months.
Yes, well.
I have to say, Ellie, this is a truly historic day because I find myself in agreement with Mr. Katz. There is no doubt that if Netanyahu succeeds in bringing about this deal, he will have his majority in parliament, because whatever the right-wing nuts are going to do, Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid's party will certainly support.
Yes, someone will come to help. Short break, gentlemen, and we continue right after, so do not go anywhere. We're right back. Gentlemen, another quick fire round, 30 seconds each. Are protests on foreign soil undermining Israel's global standing? Gilad Katz, take the lead, please.
Well, I think it's outrageous. I think it's outrageous. It's a disgrace. I wasn't surprised to see that we're talking about a few dozens of wackos. Most of them are Israelis. I know for sure that the American jury doesn't take part in these demonstrations. They don't want any part with these wackos. And I hope that the vast majority of the Israelis will understand that these people do not reflect the Israeli society.
Dan Perry?
My view is that the clear evidence that there are masses of people determined and idealistic who are willing to devote day and night to fight for Israel's democracy, whether it's in Israel or in the U.S., expats or people from Israel or American Jews, all of that is good for Israel's global standing, at least among those around the globe with whom one wishes close association. And frankly, the idea that there is a home and there is an abroad in our 24/7 borderless digital era is a little childish and very 20th century.
Well, Mr. Perry, we should send the memo to all national, ethnic, regional conflicts if that's the case. Dr. Freeman, Dr. Freeman, your thoughts?
Well, I think it shows that Israel is very strong as a democracy. People can freely move to anywhere they want. They can freely work wherever they want. They can say whatever they want without any kind of retribution. I think it really proves the opposite, that Israel continues to move towards democratic values, and none of these people know that nothing will happen to them when they return here after they protest Netanyahu.
And Dr. Freeman, following what Mr. Katz said in his opening remarks, should American jury have a say on what's happening here in Israel?
Well, I think they can have a say just like any other on the world, but I think more specifically on issues that relate to them, issues that relate to maybe aliyah laws, conversion laws, things like that. When it comes to things that have to do maybe with military service, things that have to do with actual living in this country day to day, I think it's more apparent that they might not know enough to make a very good opinion of what should be here in Israel.
I have to take some exception with that. What is knowing enough? Do you honestly think that all residents of Israel who vote in the elections know enough? The issue hasn't been so much. Well, you know what? American Jews, Israel purports to represent American Jews. Israel purports to represent them. And Israel's actions do affect them. And there's and please, if I may finish, and there's no denying that there is a closeness between American Jews and Israel that depends on the support of American Jews to ensure the support of U.S. political parties and of the U.S. administration, which it needs. We're very, very intertwined. And most American Jews do not want Israel to become an authoritarian country. The reason why they've been silent throughout the decades regarding Israeli politics is a reticence that comes from a sense that we don't have the right and we have to support Israel's government no matter what. And actually, I think the drama happening in Israel is profound enough that we might ask them to be disabused of these two things. At this particular moment, they very much have the right, and indeed they should understand that if it is possible to love Israel and not love its government, I would go so far as to say, if you love Israel, you maybe have a duty to make your opposition to this government known quite loudly and clearly.
Mr. Katz.
If I could just take it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please, Dr. Freeman. Yeah,
Well, I
Mr.
can
Katz was kind enough to let you finish. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. But you just said it really at the beginning. They vote. Okay, American Jews don't vote. So you already mentioned the main issue is that no matter what you can discuss, whether or not the Israeli voter is aware of what the issues are, the fact of the matter is they vote. And number two, if it really matters when it comes to democracy, you know, and everyone else knows here, that there's so many laws and tools that this government has when it comes to fighting terrorism that isn't so democratic that no one's protesting about when it comes to, and it's good that they're not, administrative detention, different things in the emergency laws, and they've been on the books. And if you look at actual research, over the years, they're less and less used. So democracy here is growing and not going backwards.
Mr. Katz,
Yeah,
please.
but if the 200 laws that this government... Please.
There are 5,000 laws, but I can just say this. It's got nothing to do with democracy. These protesters and their day in, day out going and trying to topple the government has got nothing to do whatsoever with democracy. We saw that when they started their hatred to the Haredim, and then we saw that once again when they all of a sudden realized or remembered that the Arab community or the Arab society
Mr.
in
Katz,
Israel...
we got your point. May I just reply before we run out of time? Because what you call a judicial overhaul, a judicial reform, what Netanyahu calls a judicial reform, a tweak, is in fact an overhaul of the system of government in Israel. And whereas you're right that there are 200 laws that members of the coalition have proposed, some of them already on a docket, and please let me finish, and in the process of legislation that would not only eviscerate judicial review, but also kneecap the gatekeepers, domesticate the media, and transfer all kinds of power to rabbinical courts, and all of it combined is a real Putinization of the country. It is much more than judicial, and it is much more radical than a reform.
Mr. Katz, yeah.
So
the problem is that, unfortunately, my colleague doesn't even understand what dictatorship means, what democracy means. According to him, if we don't accept his opinion, then we may be in a dictatorship. It's got nothing to do with democracy. It's politics.
The word
what they want is to topple. One second. What they want to do is to topple the government. They have been trying to do so since 2020, long before anyone even thought or knew about the reform. They just don't accept the results of the elections, and now they're trying in any single way, including going overseas and lying to the world.
You're not addressing my point about the 225 laws, which put paid to your claims of a minor tweak and a democratic outcome. By the way, every democracy that turned into an autocracy...
You're not listening.
Look, you have a tactic where you don't let the other person speak. Do you know that? Every democracy that became an autocracy happened because autocrats got into power one time democratically and then abused that democracy in order to change the system. And that is what's happening here. And you have to be either a supporter of it or rather credulous not to see what's going on.
Of course, we'll become now North Korea. That's where we're heading.
No, you'll become Poland or Hungary.
Okay, Dr. Freeman, in the 20 seconds we have left, sum it up for us, Dr. Freeman.
I'm very optimistic when it comes to Israel and democracy. I think that over the years, no matter who's in power, democracy is growing and growing as Israel is getting stronger and stronger. And I think in the end, what's happening right now is just a vivid picture of how Israel is democratic and how it will remain in the future as well.
Well, a healthy, vibrant debate or not so much, we'll have to wait and see. All right, gentlemen, thank you so very much. Dan Perry, Gilad Katz, Dr. Yonatan Freeman for joining us. We appreciate your time, your insight. We're out for a 2-minute break, and we'll be back with much more. Don't go anywhere.